Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
As many of you know, junk phone calls, robocalls, spam phone calls, I hate them. They're the bane of my existence. There have been days where I've gotten dozens and dozens and dozens of junk phone calls on my desk phone and on my cell phone. And we've discussed this before, and I know people say, Steve, there's things you can do about that. Of course there are. There's things you can do about that, but like anything else, you dial them up too much, you miss phone calls. You dial them down too much, you get some junk phone calls. And the most annoying thing about the junk phone calls is that they will use spoofing technology and put up the fake identification on the caller ID. And I mean, I know this is happening, but I one day got 3 phone calls in a row. One was allegedly from Beaumont Hospital, one of the biggest hospital chains in southeastern Michigan. One was from the city of Royal Oak, supposedly a city of Royal Oak. And one was allegedly from a courthouse. And all 3 of them were junk phone calls. Things like, we can help you through Medicaid. Your warranty on your car is about to expire. Do you need a knee brace? And no, it was not Beaumont calling me to ask me about a knee brace. Those are junk phone calls originating from overseas, and they're using spoofing technology. And I've been saying for years, the technology must exist to stop this. And every time I say that, I get an equal amount of people in the comments going, Steve, they can't do that. Those calls originate overseas. There's nothing they can do. And then I get an equal number saying, if they wanted to, they could, but it's all about the money. And of course, that's it. It's all about the money. I mean, use any cliche you want. We can put a man on the moon. We can have a self-driving car. Somewhat. But we can't stop junk phone calls? Come on. So starting yesterday, the last day of June, in the year of our Lord, 2021, FCC requires phone companies to confirm caller ID is legitimate to cut down on robocalls. I got 2 versions of the story because the second one's got some more details. The first one doesn't, but from Fox 5 DC. Beginning yesterday, you'll be getting fewer of those annoying robocalls thanks to a new initiative by the FCC, or so they think. Now, most phone providers, by law, have been instructed to install caller ID verification to confirm whether calls in their network are actually coming from the number on display. So the phone calls I get from Beaumont Hospital are going to stop unless Beaumont Hospital is actually going to call me, which I don't think they will. Some smaller phone companies do have a grace period, but all phone companies must now notify the FCC where they stand on protecting their customers from illegal robocalls. So it's actually, you tell us what you're doing. With the new caller ID technology, con artists should no longer be able to spoof phone numbers to pose as legitimate callers like your bank or your local sheriff's office. That's another one. And I've actually had people tell me, Steve, I got a phone call from the IRS. The IRS called me. No, they didn't. According to the FTC and the FCC, illegal robocalls cost Americans $10 billion a year in fraud and $3 billion a year in wasted time, and that number's low. I wasted $1 billion in wasted time last year on these calls. I almost swore there, sorry. Americans this year have received 4 billion robocalls a month, which is twice as many as they did 5 years ago. Teresa Murray, consumer watchdog with the USPIRG Education Fund, said, June 30th is an important day in consumer protection history. The FCC action to thwart robocalls will rank up there with laws guaranteeing consumers access to their credit reports and eliminating abusive credit card practices. Robocalls affect us all. Thousands of people fall for scams each year that start with an illegal robocall and spoof phone number. And worse, just my phone's just ringing. I look over, oh, Beaumont again. The Royal Oak Police Department's calling me again. Hey, the city of Southfield's calling me. Meanwhile, at Forbes, Wayne Rash wrote a story about the FCC's stir-shaken anti-spoofing standards, which is what they call that. The stir-shaken standards will authenticate the ID information, and it will allow phone carriers to block spoofed caller ID information. So the FCC said in its announcement that it has identified some of the smaller carriers as primary offenders in originating the spoofed robocalls. So they've given the smaller carriers a grace period, but said, but by the way, they're the ones who are doing it the worst. A spoofed robocall, of course, is one in which the caller ID information is altered so that it appears that the phone call is coming from another number and or from another caller. The call is coming from inside the house. No, just kidding. A common spoofed robocall shows the phone number of the IRS and the IRS name, but it is really a scam calling to extort money from unwitting taxpayers. Meanwhile, Jessica Rosenworcel, who's got a name I love to say, just like Kalamazoo, says, at last, stir-shaken standards are widely used reality in American phone networks. She's the acting FCC chairperson. While there is no silver bullet in the endless fight against scammers, stir-shaken will turbocharge many of the tools we use in our fight against robocalls. From consumer apps and network-level blocking to enforcement investigations and shutting down the gateways used by international robocall campaigns. This is a good day for American consumers who, like all of us, are sick and tired of illegal spoofed robocalls. In case you're curious, and usually the government's better at coming up with acronyms, those words that are all capital letters that are the initials of a longer phrase or collection of words. And the acronym is to help you remember what the longer set of words is, and this one does not help. Stir-shaken stands for Secure Telephone Identity Revisited and Signature-Based Handling of Asserted Information Using Tokens. So it should be Stir-Shaustk. Using this technology allows telephone carriers to identify phone calls with fake caller ID information. The FCC also requires telephone carriers to register their compliance in a robocall mitigation database, or the RMD. In addition to implementing these steps, the FCC has provided detailed information on call blocking tools and resources, including links to each major carrier. The agency has also produced its second annual report on robocall blocking tools. So, according to this, implementing stir-shaken and doing it faster, as we propose here, will help reduce robocalls over time, Rosenworcel again said. But we need to do a whole lot more. That's why we just issued a $225 million fine to a Texas telemarketer for illegally spoofing more than 1 billion robocalls. Seriously, is there ever a reason, a legitimate reason, that any entity on this planet should make 1 billion phone calls? Seriously. The fact that a carrier let one person make 1 billion phone calls, that carrier should be put out of business. They should recognize the fact that there's no way that a legitimate entity of any sort could be doing anything legal making 1 billion phone calls. There's no legitimate reason to do that. It's insanity, 1 billion phone calls. That's why we have sent 3 sets of cease and desist letters to 10 different providers that appear to be facilitating illegal robocalls. These letters are a final warning. Because if they don't act within 48 hours, we authorize all other providers to block their traffic. Well, that might help. What Rosenworcel has done, and this again is according to Forbes' Wayne Rash, what Rosenworcel has done is essentially exercise the FCC's nuclear option. Carriers that facilitate robocalls will have their access to national telephone networks cut off. They will not be able to communicate with anyone, at least not by phone. It's worth noting that when the FCC tells a carrier to block an offending robocall carrier, it's not a suggestion, it's a directive. Offending carriers will effectively be dropped into a black hole. However, as Rosenworcel said, it's not a silver bullet. Consumers still need to contact their phone company and ask that such calls be blocked when they get through. If they aren't, the FCC has helpfully included a link for consumers to file complaints. So once again, they're admitting we've got this law in place. We're the federal government. We can do big, bad things to big, bad people. But they still might get through it. If they do, could you please log on to the internet and find this complaint and fill out this form and send it in to us? Thank you. Again, we can put a man on the moon. Can't stop robocalls. But it looks like we might be able to. So here's the deal. I'll admit to you right now that I think this video is going up a day after I shoot it. Today in my world is July 1st. Where you are sitting, it might be July 2nd. Weird time travel issue, right? July 1st. So I don't know yet if this has made any difference. I'll watch my phone and I'll pay attention and see if I get any wacky phone calls today. And then when this video goes live, I might just put my first comment up and pin it, just to indicate like, yes, I got phone calls. No, I did not. We'll see. One day in, we'll see what happens. But meanwhile, that's the story that was sent to me by Josh, Rick, and Michael. Came both from Fox 5 and Forbes. The FCC requires phone companies to confirm caller ID is legitimate to cut down on robocalls. And the FCC anti-robocall standards go into effect today which was yesterday, which was day before yesterday, which is a riddle wrapped in an enigma from Forbes and Wayne Rash. Questions or comments, put them below. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes.